discussing about constructors in C++. Constructors are special member functions of a class that is executed whenever we create new objects of that class. Constructors has certain features. It has same name as that of the class, and the constructors do not have any return type. That is, you cannot return any value unlike other functions in constructors. So we use constructors mainly for setting the initial values of certain member variables of your class. Now, constructors are of three types: default constructors, parameterized constructors, and copy constructors. Default constructors are constructors without any arguments. Parameterized constructors, as its name says, constructors with arguments or parameters. And copy constructor is used to declare and initialize an object from an already existing object. So when you write constructor, what you have to take care of is it should have the same name as that of the class, and your constructor cannot return any value. So we'll get into programming. That time these will be more clear to you. So I'm using code blocks here. So first let me create my source file. Okay. So as you know, since you're working with C++, the source file will have the extension .cpp. First statement is nothing but file inclusion. Namespace. Okay. Now I'll start creating my class. Let my class name be test. Okay. Now I'll add a data member A. For time being, we'll work with one data member. Now hope you know the default access specifier is private. So my data member A is private. Private means the accessibility is limited to the class only. Now here I'll add a member function called as set. Right? And the functionality of this set function is nothing but to initialize your data member A. I am initializing it with a value 10. I'll add one more member function to my class, display, which is displaying my data member. Okay. So this is my class test with a data member A, which is private. I have two member functions which is public. One is the set function and the other one is the display function. Now I'll instantiate my class by creating an object in the main function. So how do you create your object? Class name, then an object variable. So let obj be my object. Now if you want a valid entry for your data member, what you have to do? You have to call the set function before calling the display. Alright. So here when you call the set function, it binds with the set function here where you are initializing the data member A to 10. Then after that you are calling the display function and displaying the content of variable A, which is you have initialized to 10. Let's check here. Yes, A is equal to 10. Now what is the risk factor here? Suppose if I am skipping this statement, that means I am forgetting to call the set function which is initializing the data member, or if I remove this set function, what happens? What will be the content of your data member? You will get some junk value, isn't it? So if you are forgetting to call the set function, or if you are forgetting or skipping your member function set, you have the risk that your data member may end up with some junk value throughout your program. To avoid this, you can work with constructor for a class. So we have already seen that constructors are special member function of a class that gets instantiated the moment you create an object to the class. That is, we'll start with default constructor. So I'm going to add a default constructor to my class. So how will you add? It doesn't have any return type and the function name is same as that of the class name. And since it is a default constructor, there are no arguments to your function. So here a equal to 10. So I have replaced the set function by the constructor of the class. This is your default constructor. Right? Let's run and check. Are you getting the value 10? Yes. Now, have you made a call to the constructor function? No. The constructor gets called or invoked whenever you create an object to the class. Here the programmer doesn't have to call the constructor function. When you create an object to the class, the compiler internally makes a call to the constructor function. So here this statement is a call to constructor. So here compiler makes a call to constructor and binds with the constructor function here where you are initializing the value of a to 10. Okay, so the calling of the constructor is done by the compiler itself. You don't have to bother about that. So this is about default constructors. Now let's see what a parameterized constructor is going to do. How is it working? So as you know how you work with functions with parameters, same way constructors, parameterized constructor is also capable of taking arguments. So suppose if here it has an argument say x, where is the function call coming? Constructor call in this statement, right? So here when you make a call, you pass an argument. And here instead of saying 10, you initialize it with x. So what happens? This is the function call obj of 10. You are calling the constructor function. So this 10 gets passed and received by variable x. So you are telling a equal to x. That means a is initialized with the value 10. Let's verify. Yes, you are getting the output a equal to 10. This is parameterized constructor. Fine. Now you can have more than one constructor in your class. That is, you can overload your constructors. Let's see an example. So to this I will add, okay, this is parameterized constructor, right? I will add a default constructor also here. Let's initialize it with equal to 20. So this statement is a call to parameterized constructor. Now we'll create another object, say obj1, and since I'm obj1, since I'm not passing any arguments here, this becomes a call to default constructor. Let me print obj, let me call the display function with respect to obj1. Okay. So what is your expected output here? This display function will give your output as 10 and this display function will give your output as what? 20. Let's verify. Yes, a equal to 10 in the first case where I have invoked the parameterized constructor, and a equal to 20 the second case where I have worked with default constructor. Now, even if we do not define any constructor explicitly, the compiler will automatically provide a default constructor implicitly. Please note that point. So this is about default constructors and parameterized constructors. Next is copy constructors. So copy constructor gets called when you pass an object, that is, I'll just remove these parameterized constructors and default constructor here. Okay. So first I'll show you the statement that is invoking a copy constructor. So I'll create an object test obj. Right, this will invoke a default constructor. So even though you are not giving a default constructor to your class, the compiler itself is going to add a default constructor to your class. Now test obj1. I am creating a new object obj1 by making use of an existing object. So this becomes a call to your copy constructor. Getting? Here I have created obj, test obj. I will add a default constructor here. Fine. So this statement invokes what? Your default constructor. So the data member A gets initialized with 10. Now look at this statement. Up to this, test obj1 means what? You are creating a new object obj1 to your class test. Now see, of obj. This obj has been already created. So you are trying to make a copy of this obj. This statement invokes your copy constructor. Now how to write a copy constructor? The argument to your copy constructor must be a reference object. That is, it's a constructor, so it will have the same name as that of the class. Now you are passing an object here, so it should be received by another object. So here you should receive it as a constant reference object. Let's say P. Const test reference P. You have created another object P which is a reference. Now how will I write the statement here? P dot A equal to, we write a constructor to initialize your data members, isn't it? So A here will be initialized with what? P dot A. What is that P dot A? It is equivalent to obj dot A. You are passing the object obj. It is received by its reference P. So when I say P dot A, you are accessing the data member A through the object P, which is a reference to the already created object obj. Alright, now let's call the display function through object obj and obj1. You should get the same output. obj.display obj1 dot display. Let's see what happens. Yes, A equal to 10, A equal to 10. So this is copy constructor. The argument to your copy constructor should always be a reference object. You cannot pass it by value. So that's about constructors. So constructors are special member functions of a class that gets instantiated when you create object to your class. They are of three types: default constructors, parameterized constructors, and copy constructors. Hope the topic was clear. If you have any doubts, please get back to me. Thank you.